The rain hammered against the thin glass of the small Atlanta apartment, each drop echoing like a countdown. Aaliyah Carter shifted uncomfortably on the worn couch, one hand cradling her swollen belly, the other clutching her phone. She stared at the screen, waiting for a message, a call, anything from Marcus. Her heart pounded not just from the weight of the twins she carried, but from the silence that seemed to grow louder with every passing hour. "Come on, Marcus," she whispered into the empty room. "Don't do this to me now." But the door didn't open, and her phone didn't buzz. She closed her eyes, willing back the tears. For years, she had believed Marcus Johnson was her partner in everything. They had dreamed together, laughed together, shared meals when there was barely enough food to stretch across the table. But lately, something had shifted. He had grown distant, restless, as if life with her wasn't enough anymore. And tonight, that fear was becoming real. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss stories like this one, filled with powerful lessons about love, betrayal, and redemption. Aaliyah forced herself up from the couch, her breath catching as the twins pressed against her ribs. She shuffled toward the small window, watching headlights streak down the rain-slick street below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was making choices that would define both their lives. She remembered when they first met, back at Spelman College. She had been studying early childhood education, and he was chasing dreams of business ownership. They bonded over long walks on Auburn Avenue, stopping at food trucks for fried fish and sweet tea. He used to tell her, "We're gonna build an empire, baby. Just you and me." She had believed every word, but now, years later, the empire looked more like a crumbling castle. Bills piled high on the counter, eviction notices tucked away in drawers. Aaliyah worked long hours at a local diner, standing on swollen feet even through her pregnancy, while Marcus chased one business venture after another, none of them lasting long enough to provide stability. His frustration grew, and with it, a bitterness that seemed to point in her direction. It wasn't just financial pressure. It was the way he looked at her lately, like she was a reminder of everything he hadn't achieved. The once ambitious man she loved now seemed to crave something different, something shinier. And she knew where his eyes had started to wander. Vanessa Reed. Aaliyah had seen the woman at community events, always arriving in sleek black cars, her clothes tailored to perfection, her jewelry catching every light. Vanessa was the kind of woman people noticed when she entered a room. Marcus had noticed too, and that notice had grown into something more dangerous. The first time Aaliyah saw Marcus speaking with Vanessa, she brushed it off as harmless. But when his absences became frequent, and when money he claimed to invest mysteriously disappeared, the truth became harder to ignore. Tonight confirmed what her heart already feared. He wasn't coming back. Still, part of her clung to hope. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "Don't worry, babies, Mama's here. I'll always be here." The words steadied her, reminding her of the strength that ran through her veins, the same strength her mother Evelyn had carried raising her. She thought of Evelyn's words at church just last Sunday. "God don't put more on you than you can bear. Stand tall, Aaliyah. You're stronger than you think." Strength was what she needed now, even as the storm raged outside and inside her heart. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Marcus never returned. The rain eased, but the silence remained. Aaliyah sat back on the couch, exhaustion finally weighing her eyelids closed. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Marcus, his smile, his promises, and the terrifying possibility that he had chosen someone else over the family they had built together. And in that moment, she realized her story was about to change forever. The morning sun slipped through thin blinds, scattering pale light across the small apartment. Aaliyah sat at the edge of her bed, swollen feet resting on the floor, her hands pressing against the weight of her belly. She hadn't slept much. The silence of the night had carried over into the day, and the emptiness of Marcus's absence was heavy enough to choke her. When the front door finally opened, her heart leapt with fragile hope. Marcus stepped inside, wearing the same clothes from the day before, his eyes avoiding hers. The smell of expensive cologne clung to him, foreign to their modest home. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling between relief and anger. Where were you? Do you know what it's like sitting here, not knowing if you're even alive? He dropped his keys on the counter with a sharp clatter, his jaw tightening. Don't start, Aaliyah. I needed time to think. Think? She echoed, her voice rising. I'm carrying your children, Marcus. What could be more important than being here with me? He finally met her gaze, and in his eyes she saw something cold, something already slipping away. Aaliyah, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living like this, struggling every day, scraping by like we don't deserve better. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced her voice steady. We do deserve better. That's why we fight, why we sacrifice. Together. That was the promise, Marcus. His shoulders slumped, then straightened again as though he had rehearsed the words. Vanessa believes in me. She's giving me a chance to live the life I've always wanted. I can't turn that down. The name hit Aaliyah like a blade. Her breath caught, her chest tight. Vanessa. You're leaving me for her? She sees my potential, he said, almost defensive. She has the resources to make my ideas real. She believes I can be more than this. And what about us? Her voice cracked now, raw and desperate. What about the children you begged me to have? Do they not deserve your belief too? For a moment his expression faltered, guilt flickering in his eyes. But then he hardened again. They'll be fine. You're strong. You've always been strong. You don't need me the way I need this chance. The words cut deeper than any silence ever could. You think money and fancy dinners will make you a man? She asked, anger spilling over. Being a man is standing by your family when times are hard. Not running off to play someone else's game. Marcus grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, stuffing clothes into it without meeting her eyes. The sound of zippers and fabric was louder than the storm had been the night before. Marcus, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, don't do this. Don't leave me to raise them alone. He froze at the door, his back turned to her. His voice was low, almost ashamed. I'll send money when I can. And with that he walked out. The door closed and the apartment seemed to exhale all at once, leaving only the sound of Aaliyah's sobs. She pressed her hands to her belly, rocking gently, whispering through her tears. It's just us now, babies, just us. Outside, neighbors noticed. Whispers would soon start, about the man who abandoned his wife, about the woman left behind to struggle. In their community, news traveled faster than the wind, and judgment often followed. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that Marcus was gone, and Aaliyah was left standing in the ruins of promises that had once seemed unbreakable. And deep in her heart, as the first sharp pain of betrayal settled into her chest, she knew this was only the beginning of a battle she never asked for. The weeks that followed Marcus's departure blurred into a haze of exhaustion, swollen ankles, and quiet tears shed in the dim glow of a bedside lamp. Aaliyah moved slowly through her days, clinging to strength she didn't always feel. She folded baby clothes alone, arranged a crib with trembling hands, and filled the apartment with soft lullabies that no one else heard. Every kick from inside her womb reminded her of what she still had, a reason to keep going. Yet the fear gnawed at her. How could she raise 2 children on her own when just paying rent felt like a battle? Her mother Evelyn visited often, carrying bags of groceries and scripture on her lips. One evening, Evelyn set a hand firmly on Aaliyah's shoulder as they prepared dinner together. Child, storms don't last forever. These babies are a blessing, not a burden. God will make a way. Aaliyah nodded, though her heart ached with doubt. Mama, what if I'm not enough? What if I can't give them what they need? You will, Evelyn said, her voice unwavering, because love is more than enough, and you've got plenty of that. The night labor began. The apartment felt heavier than ever. Contractions rolled through her body like waves crashing against rock, stealing her breath and bending her double. She clutched the kitchen counter, sweat dampening her forehead. Mama! She cried out, her voice breaking. Evelyn rushed to her side, steadying her. It's time, baby girl. We need to get you to Grady Memorial now. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear, mixed with the hum of machines and hurried footsteps. Nurses swarmed around her, voices rising and falling in urgent tones, while Evelyn held her hand tight, whispering prayers that wrapped around her like a shield. Hours stretched into what felt like eternity. Aaliyah screamed, groaned, and fought through the pain, clinging to Evelyn's hand as if it were the last rope tethering her to earth. Finally, the sound broke through, sharp, fierce, and alive. The first baby's cry pierced the sterile air. Tears blurred Aaliyah's vision as the nurse announced, "It's a boy." Moments later, another cry followed, softer but insistent. "And a girl." They placed the babies in her arms, and for the first time in months, her body shook not from fear but from awe. Jordan and Maya, tiny, perfect, and breathing life into her broken heart. She traced their delicate fingers, their soft curls damp from birth, their eyes fluttering open to meet her, as if they already knew her love. Evelyn leaned close, tears streaming down her face. "Look at them, Aaliyah. Look at what you brought into this world. You're not alone, you've got family and you've got God's grace." But even in that joy, Marcus's absence hung heavy. There was no father pacing the waiting room, no proud smile, no whispered promises of forever. Just silence where his presence should have been. And yet, as Aaliyah gazed down at her twins, she realized something profound. She didn't need Marcus's validation to feel whole anymore. When a nurse asked for the father's information for the birth certificate, Aaliyah's lips pressed together, her throat tightening. "Just put my name," she said finally, voice calm but resolute. Later that night, when the room grew quiet, she rocked both babies in her arms, humming a tune her grandmother once sang on hot summer nights back in Macon. She whispered to them, "Mama's here, always. No matter what your daddy chose, I will never leave you." In that moment, a new fire lit within her chest. Betrayal had nearly broken her, but Jordan and Maya stitched her spirit back together with every breath they took. They weren't just her children. They were her reason to rise, her reason to fight, her reason to believe that brighter days were still possible. And as dawn painted soft light across the hospital blinds, Aaliyah smiled for the first time in what felt like forever, her heart whispering, "We're going to be okay." Marcus adjusted the cuffs of his new tailored suit, the fabric smooth beneath his fingertips. He had never worn anything so expensive, and the mirror in Vanessa Reed's penthouse reflected a version of himself he barely recognized. Gold cufflinks glinted at his wrists, polished shoes gleamed like obsidian, and the faint aroma of imported cologne clung to his skin. On the surface, he was finally living the life he had always dreamed of, wealth, power, and recognition. Yet beneath the polished exterior, an unease gnawed at him. "Stop fidgeting," Vanessa said from across the room, her voice crisp and commanding. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Atlanta skyline glittering behind her. Her silk gown shimmered under the chandelier, every detail of her presence announcing wealth and authority. "Tonight is important. The people you'll meet are not forgiving of weakness." Marcus forced a smile. "I'm ready." "I can handle this." Vanessa arched a brow, her lips curving into something between approval and skepticism. "We'll see." The gala was a spectacle Marcus had only ever seen on television. Black luxury cars lined the driveway of a Buckhead mansion. Men in tuxedos and women in sparkling gowns stepped out gracefully, photographers flashing bulbs as if every arrival were an event. Inside, the air buzzed with laughter and deals disguised as casual conversation. Jazz floated through the hall, and waiters glided by with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres Marcus couldn't even pronounce. He tried to mirror Vanessa's poise, walking with his chest out and chin high, but he felt eyes on him. Men in power tailored their smiles too sharply, and women's gazes slid past him like he wasn't worth noticing. He was Vanessa's accessory, not her equal. "Marcus Johnson." Vanessa introduced him to a group of businessmen, her hand lightly on his arm. "A man with big ideas and the ambition to match." They nodded politely, their smiles thin. One of them, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, asked, "And what ventures have you succeeded in so far?" Marcus's throat tightened. He stammered something about past projects, glossing over failures, but the man's smirk revealed he wasn't convinced. Vanessa intervened smoothly, shifting the topic, but Marcus's pride burned. Later, as they sat at a table laden with crystal glasses and fine china, Vanessa leaned close, her perfume sharp and intoxicating. "You need to learn how to move in these circles, Marcus. Confidence isn't enough. You need results. People here invest in winners, not dreamers." Her words cut, but he swallowed his frustration. He couldn't afford to show weakness. As the evening dragged on, Marcus excused himself to the balcony. The cool night air felt like freedom compared to the suffocating room inside. From high above the city, he could see the lights stretching endlessly, promising everything he had once longed for. But standing there alone, he wondered why the promise felt so hollow. He thought of Aliyah, of their cramped apartment, the laughter they once shared over cheap takeout, the way her eyes had lit up when he spoke of his dreams. For a brief moment, guilt twisted inside him, but he pushed it down, whispering to himself, "This is the price of success. She'll understand someday." Behind him, Vanessa's voice broke the silence. "Don't get lost in nostalgia, Marcus. That world is behind you now." He turned, forcing a smile. "I know, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." But as he followed her back into the golden glow of the gala, he couldn't shake the feeling that the suit, the smiles, and even the champagne were nothing more than a costume, one that fit too tightly and threatened to suffocate him. And deep down, though he wouldn't admit it, he wondered how long he could pretend before the truth caught up to him. The diner smelled of grease, coffee, and exhaustion. Aliyah balanced 2 plates on her aching arms, the twins' cries still echoing in her memory from the sleepless night before. Her uniform clung to her with sweat, and her swollen ankles screamed for rest. She plastered on a smile as she set the plates in front of a couple, her voice steady though her body trembled. "Thank you, ma'am," the man said, barely glancing up from his phone. Aliyah nodded, forcing cheerfulness. "Y'all enjoy." When she slipped back into the kitchen, she leaned against the counter, inhaling deeply, as though air alone could restore her strength. She thought of Jordan and Maya in the crib at home, her mother Evelyn keeping watch. They were her anchor, but they were also the weight pressing down harder than anything she had ever carried. During her short break, she sat in the corner of the diner, pulling out her phone to check for missed calls. None from Marcus, not a single message asking about the babies, no word of concern. She clenched her jaw, shoving the phone back in her pocket. Her co-worker, a middle-aged woman named Teresa, slid into the booth across from her. "Girl, you look like you're running on fumes. You can't keep doing double shifts like this." Aliyah gave a humorless laugh. "Rent's not going to pay itself, Teresa. Diapers, formula bills, it's all on me now." Teresa's eyes softened. "You're stronger than most, Aliyah, but even the strong need rest." Aliyah shook her head. "Rest is a luxury I can't afford." When her shift ended, the humid Atlanta air wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She dragged herself onto the bus, clutching a bag of groceries bought with the last of her tips. Each bump in the road rattled through her tired bones, but thoughts of the twins pushed her forward. Back at the apartment, Evelyn was rocking Jordan while Maya fussed in the crib. Evelyn looked up, her smile warm but weary. "How was work, baby girl?" "Same as always," Aliyah sighed, dropping the grocery bag on the counter. Long and hard, Evelyn kissed Jordan's forehead before handing him to Aliyah. "These babies don't know how lucky they are to have you." Aliyah pressed her lips to her son's tiny curls, her eyes closing. "Some days I don't feel lucky, Mama. Some days I just feel tired." Later that week, as she struggled with a stroller on the cracked sidewalk, a familiar voice called her name. "Aliyah!" She turned to see David Brooks jogging across the street. He still wore his mechanic's coveralls, grease smeared on his hands, but his smile was the same one that had comforted her since childhood. "Need a hand?" he asked, grabbing the stubborn stroller wheel before she could protest. Relief washed over her. "Thank you, David." "This thing's been giving me hell all day." He knelt to fix the wheel, glancing at the babies. "So these are the little ones I've been hearing about. They're beautiful, Aliyah, just like their mama." She blushed, brushing off the compliment. "They're my whole world." David stood, his gaze steady. "And your world shouldn't feel this heavy." "If you ever need help," Rides, babysitting, anything, you know where to find me. His sincerity tugged at her, but she pushed the thought aside. I'll be fine. I have to be. That night, after feeding the twins and laying them down, Aaliyah stood by the window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. The struggle was real, the exhaustion constant, but beneath it all burned a quiet determination. She whispered to the dark, "I won't let this break me." And as the babies slept peacefully, she promised herself that no matter how hard the road became, she would keep moving forward. Marcus sat in the leather chair of Vanessa's office. The city skyline stretched out like a promise behind her. Papers covered the desk, contracts, proposals, deals he was supposed to understand. He tapped a pen against his notepad, trying to look engaged, but the numbers and jargon swam before his eyes. "You're quiet," Vanessa said sharply, her gaze never leaving the document she was reviewing. "I'm just taking it all in," Marcus replied, forcing confidence. "It's a lot, but I'll get it." She looked up, her eyes piercing. "You need to do more than get it. If you want to succeed in this world, you have to command it. People don't wait for you to catch up. They move on without you." Her words stung, but Marcus nodded. "I'll handle it." And on the surface, he did. With Vanessa's guidance, he attended high-stakes meetings, shook hands with investors, and smiled for pictures in magazines that called him a rising star. He wore suits that fit like armor, drove cars that turned heads, and dined at restaurants where the menus didn't list prices. But every night, when the applause faded, unease crawled beneath his skin. Success didn't feel the way he had imagined. At one dinner party, surrounded by Vanessa's wealthy friends, Marcus laughed at a joke he didn't find funny, sipping champagne that burned his throat. A man beside him asked casually, "So, Marcus, tell us about your background. Where'd you go to school?" Marcus shifted in his chair. Georgia State, business major." The man smiled thinly. Not Ivy League, then." He turned away before Marcus could answer. The dismissal cut deep. In that moment, Marcus realized that to these people, he was tolerated, not respected. He was Vanessa's project, her polished accessory, not an equal. Later that night, as they drove back to the penthouse, Marcus stared out the window at the streets below. Streets he used to walk with Aaliyah, eating fried chicken from styrofoam boxes, laughing about dreams of the future. For the first time in weeks, he wondered what she was doing now. Vanessa broke the silence. "You embarrassed yourself tonight." His head snapped toward her. "Excuse me." You hesitated. You didn't command the room. You let them see weakness. If you want to thrive, Marcus, you can't keep clinging to your past. Forget where you came from. It doesn't serve you anymore. Her words landed heavy, but he forced a calm reply. "My past made me who I am," she scoffed. "No, Marcus, I am making you who you are." "Don't forget that." The sting of her words lingered long after they reached the penthouse. Marcus poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The man staring back wore wealth like a costume, but his eyes carried a hollowness he couldn't ignore. In moments of solitude, guilt whispered to him. He thought of Aaliyah's face the night he left, the pain in her voice when she begged him not to walk out. He thought of the children he had never seen, their existence a shadow that haunted him when the penthouse grew too quiet. Still, pride kept him from reaching out. He told himself he had chosen the better life, that sacrifice was necessary for greatness. And yet every time Vanessa's sharp voice reminded him of his place, doubt burrowed deeper. One evening, as the city lights flickered against the glass, Marcus whispered to himself, "Is this really what I wanted?" The silence that followed gave him no answer, only the echo of a truth he wasn't ready to face. Sunday morning sunlight spilled across Auburn Avenue as church bells rang, calling the community together. Aaliyah adjusted the twins' clothes, smoothing Jordan's tiny bow tie and brushing Maya's curls with gentle fingers. Her mother, Evelyn, smiled as she fastened her own hat, the kind of wide-brimmed crown that made her presence impossible to miss. "Ready, baby girl?" Evelyn asked. Aaliyah nodded, though her heart was heavy. She didn't feel ready for much these days, but she knew she had to show up, not just for herself, but for the children. The church doors opened, releasing a swell of gospel music that wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Inside, voices rose in harmony, clapping hands, keeping time. Aaliyah felt her shoulders ease for the first time in days. People greeted her with smiles, hugs, and words of encouragement. "Sister Carter, look at those babies," Deacon Harris boomed, his deep laugh echoing. "Double the blessing right there." Aaliyah smiled, though her voice cracked. "Yes, sir. A blessing indeed." During service, Pastor Green spoke with passion. "We all stumble, we all struggle, but the Lord places people in our lives to lift us when we can't lift ourselves. Don't be too proud to lean on your community." The words struck Aaliyah like a lifeline. She had been trying to carry everything alone. Her grief, her exhaustion, her fear. Maybe it was time to let others share the weight. After service, the fellowship hall bustled with energy. Tables overflowed with fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and sweet tea. Laughter rang out as children darted between chairs. Evelyn carried Maya while Aaliyah filled a plate, her heart softening at the sight of neighbors passing the twins around, cooing over them like family. "Baby, you don't know how proud we are of you," said Sister Louise, her voice gentle but firm. "You keep walking with your head high. Don't let nobody tell you your worth." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes. "Thank you. Some days it feels like I'm barely holding on." "That's why you've got us," Sister Louise replied, patting her arm. "You don't have to hold on alone." Later that week, the community's love showed up again. At a neighborhood cookout, the smell of barbecue filled the air while music played from a speaker on someone's porch. Kids splashed in sprinklers, neighbors played dominoes at folding tables, and the rhythm of laughter mingled with the hum of cicadas. David showed up too, carrying a pack of sodas. He spotted Aaliyah sitting with the twins and walked over, his smile easy. "Mind if I join y'all?" "Of course not," Aaliyah said, shifting Jordan onto her lap. He sat down, nodding toward the crowd. "This right here, this is what keeps us going. Community. It's not perfect, but it's family." She glanced around, watching neighbors share food, stories, and joy despite their struggles. "I don't know what I'd do without it," she admitted. David leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to figure it all out today. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and if you stumble, we'll catch you." His words sank deep, steadying her heart. That night, as Aaliyah laid the twins in their crib, she replayed the day in her mind. The gospel choir, the laughter, the smell of barbecue smoke hanging in the summer air. For the first time in months, she felt something stronger than exhaustion. She felt hope. And though Marcus's absence was still a wound that hadn't healed, the love of her community reminded her that she wasn't walking this road alone. The envelope sat on the counter for 2 days before Aaliyah found the courage to open it. It had arrived with the morning mail, tucked between a stack of bills and grocery store coupons. The sender's name was unfamiliar, a law firm from Savannah. At first, she thought it was another debt notice or mistake, but something about the embossed lettering made her pause. Finally, on a quiet Tuesday night after putting the twins to bed, she tore it open. Her eyes skimmed the words once, then again, her breath catching. Her late great-aunt Lillian, whom she barely remembered from childhood, had passed away and left behind a piece of land in Macon. A modest inheritance, the lawyer wrote, but something tangible, something hers. She sank into a chair, the letter trembling in her hands. Land, property, a legacy she had never expected. Evelyn, folding laundry nearby, noticed the look on her daughter's face. "What is it, baby girl?" Aaliyah handed her the letter. Evelyn read it slowly, then let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "Well, would you look at that? The Lord's opening doors." Aaliyah shook her head, overwhelmed. "Mama, I don't even know what to do with land. I can't afford to build on it, and selling it feels wrong." "It's like a piece of our family's history." Evelyn placed the letter back in her hands. "You don't have to have all the answers tonight. Just know this. Not all blessings come when we want them, but they come right on time." That weekend, Aaliyah rode down to Macon with the twins, Evelyn and David, who insisted on driving. The air smelled of pine and red Georgia clay as they pulled up to the overgrown plot. Wildflowers sprouted along the edges, and the old wooden fence leaned like a tired soldier. "It may not look like much now," David said, stepping out of the car, "but this land has value. Don't underestimate it." Aaliyah stood there in the warm sun, Jordan on her hip and Maya tugging at her shirt, and for the first time she felt a flicker of possibility. Neighbors from the area came by when they heard who she was. Some remembered Aunt Lillian as a fierce woman who kept her garden neat and her voice loud at church. They welcomed Aaliyah warmly, offering stories and encouragement. Back in Atlanta, word traveled quickly through her own community. At the diner, Teresa grinned when she heard, "Girl, you might be sitting on a gold mine. Developers are always sniffing around Macon." "I don't know yet," Aaliyah admitted. "But I do know one thing. I want to do something that makes life better for my kids, something that lasts." The news brought a strange mix of pride and pressure. For the first time, she had more than survival in her hands. She had options. Late one night, unable to sleep, Aaliyah stood by the window with Maya in her arms. She whispered, "Mama's gonna make sure you and your brother grow up with more than I had. I don't know how yet, but this feels like the start of something." She pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead, feeling hope stir inside her chest like a flame that had been waiting for air. What she didn't know was that whispers of her fortune would soon drift through the same circles Marcus now tried to belong to, and eventually they would reach his ears. But for now, in the quiet of her small apartment, all Aaliyah felt was a spark of strength. For the first time since Marcus had left, the future no longer seemed like a dark tunnel. It looked like a road waiting to be built, by her, for her children. The knock at the door came on a warm Saturday afternoon. Aaliyah was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of collard greens while the twins played on a blanket in the living room. She froze at the sound, her heart beating faster. Few people knocked without calling first. Wiping her hands on a towel, she opened the door, and her breath caught. Marcus stood there, dressed sharply but with tired eyes, his cologne familiar yet distant. "Aaliyah," he said softly, almost as if testing her reaction. Her grip tightened on the doorknob. "What are you doing here?" He glanced past her into the apartment, his gaze landing on the twins. His eyes widened, and his voice cracked. They're mine." Aaliyah's body stiffened. "Yes, Marcus. Yours. The ones you left behind." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, moving toward the children as if pulled by gravity. Jordan looked up at him curiously, while Maya clutched her toy tightly. Marcus knelt, tears welling in his eyes. "I can't believe how much time I've missed." Aaliyah crossed her arms, anger rising. "You chose to miss it. Don't act like it just slipped away." He turned to her, pain etched on his face. "I was wrong. I thought I needed that life with Vanessa to prove something. To prove I was more than just a man struggling to make ends meet. But every night, I thought about you. About them. I can't keep running from it." Her voice was sharp. "You didn't just run, Marcus. You abandoned us. I went through pregnancy, labor, nights of crying babies, all without you. You don't get to waltz back in and pretend you're the father of the year." He swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want a chance. Please, let me try." The room felt heavy with unspoken history. Aaliyah studied him, searching for sincerity. She saw regret in his eyes, but also the same charm that had once fooled her. "You show up now, why?" she asked, suspicion lacing her voice. "What made you suddenly remember we exist?" Marcus hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Word gets around. I heard about the land in Macon, about how you're building a future, and it made me realize what I threw away. You're stronger than anyone I know, Aaliyah. I want to be part of that again." Her eyes narrowed. "So this is about the inheritance." "No," he said quickly, stepping closer. "This is about us, about family. I don't care about the money. I miss you." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. "You miss the idea of me, Marcus, the woman who stood by you when you had nothing. But when I needed you most, you chose someone else." The twins began to fuss, breaking the tension. Aaliyah picked them up, one in each arm, holding them close. "They don't know you. To them, You're just a stranger in a nice suit." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Then let me change that. Let me be more than a stranger." Her heart twisted, torn between anger and the faint flicker of old love. But she couldn't ignore the deep wound he had left. "You can't just erase what happened, Marcus. It doesn't work that way." Silence hung between them, heavy and unyielding. Finally, Aaliyah turned away, her voice low but firm. "If you want to prove you've changed, it won't be with words. It'll be with actions. Until then, don't expect me to trust you." Marcus nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging. "I'll do whatever it takes." As he left, the air in the apartment felt charged, unsettled. For the first time, Marcus had seen the life he had abandoned, and Aaliyah knew his return would test her strength in ways she hadn't yet imagined. Vanessa's penthouse glittered with the same opulence Marcus had once craved: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and a skyline view that screamed success. Yet for the first time he entered not with pride, but with a knot twisting in his stomach. He knew she had already heard whispers. Vanessa stood by the window, sipping wine from a crystal glass, her silhouette sharp against the city lights. She didn't turn as he walked in. "So," she said coolly, "I hear you've been visiting your little family again." Marcus stiffened. "They're not just my little family, Vanessa. They're my children." Finally she turned, her eyes cold and piercing. "Children you never cared to mention at those fancy dinners. Children you left behind when you walked into this world." He shifted uncomfortably. "I thought I could move on. I thought this life would be enough. But I can't ignore them anymore." Vanessa's laugh was sharp, almost cruel. "So now you want to play daddy? Spare me, Marcus. You don't belong in both worlds. You either stay here with me, where you've built something, or you crawl back to that life you were so desperate to escape." His fists clenched at his sides. "Built something? Vanessa, let's be real. This isn't mine, it's yours. I've been living in your shadow, paraded around like some project you polished up to impress your friends." Her eyes narrowed, voice dripping with venom. "Don't forget, Marcus, you begged for this chance. You wanted out of that rundown apartment, away from that woman who kept you chained to mediocrity. I gave you everything you asked for." The words cut deep, but Marcus found his voice steady. "You gave me things, Vanessa. Clothes, cars, access. But you never gave me respect, and the truth is all those things mean nothing when I can't look my own kids in the eye." Vanessa slammed her glass onto the counter, wine spilling across the marble. "Respect? You think running back to some single mother in the hood is going to give you respect? Those people will never see you as more than a coward who walked away." Marcus's jaw tightened, shame burning in his chest. He had no defense against the truth of her words. Still, he forced himself to meet her gaze. "Maybe. But I'd rather face their judgment than keep living a lie in your world." Her face hardened, her beauty sharp as glass. "If you walk out that door, Marcus, don't expect to come back. You'll lose everything I've given you." He hesitated, the weight of her ultimatum pressing down on him. Luxury or loyalty, image or identity. "I already lost the most important thing," he said quietly, "and I'm trying to fix that." For a moment, Vanessa's mask slipped, revealing anger mixed with something almost like disappointment. She stepped closer, her voice low and dangerous. "You're a fool. Do you really think she'll take you back after what you did? She'll never see you the same." Marcus swallowed hard, the truth of it gnawing at him. "Maybe she won't, but at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I chose them." Vanessa's eyes flashed, her voice rising. "Then go. But remember, without me, you're nothing but a man with broken dreams and empty pockets." Marcus turned toward the door, his chest heavy, but his resolve clearer than it had been in years. "Then I guess it's time I find out who I am without you." The sound of the door closing behind him echoed louder than any applause he had ever received. For the first time, he wasn't chasing Vanessa's version of success. He was stepping into the unknown, haunted by his past, but determined to face it head-on. The afternoon sun spilled across Auburn Avenue as Aaliyah stood in front of a brick storefront with a faded sign. The building was old but sturdy, its windows dusty yet full of potential. With Jordan and Maya tugging at her skirt, she could almost see it transformed. A place where working mothers like her could leave their children in safety. a space filled with laughter and learning instead of worry. David leaned against his truck nearby, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice carrying both caution and admiration. Aaliyah looked at him, determination blazing in her eyes. "I've been sure about very few things since Marcus left, but this feels right. The inheritance wasn't meant to sit in the bank, it was meant to build something that lasts." David smiled. "Then I'll help you make it happen." The weeks that followed were a blur of planning, paperwork, and prayer. Evelyn watched the twins while Aaliyah met with city officials, learning about permits and safety codes she never thought she'd need to understand. David used his mechanical skills to handle repairs, patching walls and fixing pipes with stubborn persistence. Neighbors volunteered their time, painting walls, hauling furniture, donating toys and books. The community that had held her up in her darkest days now rallied behind her vision. One evening, as she stood in the half-renovated building, Aaliyah felt the weight of the moment. The air smelled of fresh paint and sawdust, but beneath that was the scent of hope. Evelyn joined her, adjusting her church hat as always. "Baby girl," Evelyn said softly, "your great-aunt would be proud." She always believed land was more than dirt. It was legacy. And look at you now, turning it into something living. Aaliyah's throat tightened. "I just want to make sure no mother feels the way I did, alone, stretched too thin, with nowhere safe to leave her babies." Evelyn kissed her cheek. "That's called turning pain into purpose." By the time the center opened, word had spread beyond their neighborhood. The Carter Children's Center became more than just a daycare. It was a sanctuary. Murals of bright colors covered the walls, painted by local artists. Shelves overflowed with books. The laughter of children echoed through the halls, as working mothers dropped them off with relief instead of fear. On opening day, Teresa from the diner hugged Aaliyah tightly. "You did it, girl. You turned struggle into strength." David stood beside her, pride shining in his eyes. This is just the beginning. Still, amid the joy, Aaliyah couldn't ignore the weight of Marcus's shadow. He hadn't disappeared. She had seen him once standing across the street, watching quietly as parents lined up with their children. He hadn't approached, but his presence stirred something complicated inside her. Anger, yes, but also a quiet ache for what could have been. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the reality in front of her. The center wasn't just a building. It was proof that her children's future didn't depend on anyone else's choices. It was proof that she could rise from betrayal and carve out something lasting. That night, as she locked up for the first time, Jordan asleep on her shoulder and Maya curled against her chest, she whispered, "This is for you. Everything I do is for you." The glow of the streetlights illuminated her tired but triumphant face. She had built something with her own hands, something no one could take from her. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a promise. The Carter Children's Center thrived in ways Aaliyah hadn't dared to imagine. Every morning mothers arrived with sleepy toddlers in tow, their faces carrying both relief and gratitude. The sound of children's laughter filled the halls, and bright murals painted by neighborhood artists gave the building a spirit of joy. Aaliyah walked through the center with her clipboard, checking off tasks but also soaking in the life around her. Jordan and Maya toddled after her, their giggles trailing like music. For the first time in years, she felt more than survival. She felt purpose. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk reviewing paperwork, David knocked on the open door. "You're officially the busiest woman I know," he teased, setting down 2 cups of sweet tea. She smiled, taking one gratefully. "That's because I don't have time to slow down. There's too much at stake." David studied her, his tone softening. "You've built something amazing, Aaliyah. You've taken what life threw at you and turned it into something bigger than yourself. That takes strength most people don't have." Her eyes shimmered, though she laughed to brush it off. "Strength or stubbornness? I'm not sure which one's keeping me going." "It's both," he said. "And that's what makes you unstoppable." Word of her leadership spread quickly through the community. She was invited to speak at church meetings, where other women looked to her for guidance. She shared her story honestly, of betrayal, exhaustion, and hope reborn. Each time she spoke, she reminded them that strength didn't mean walking alone, but knowing when to lean on others. Evelyn often reminded her, "Baby girl, God took your pain and turned it into power. Don't forget who you are in the process." Still, moments of doubt crept in. At night, after the children were asleep, Aaliyah sometimes stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. The memory of Marcus lingered, his charm, his promises, and the gaping wound of his betrayal. Even now, when she spotted him on rare occasions at the edge of community gatherings, her heart twisted with conflicting emotions. One evening, after closing the center, Aaliyah sat outside on the steps, her body weary but her spirit burning. David joined her, sitting close enough to offer comfort, but far enough to respect her space. "You've been carrying a lot," he said gently. She exhaled, her voice quiet. "Some days I wonder how much longer I can keep this up. Running the center, raising the twins, trying to be strong for everyone, it's heavy." David nodded. "It's okay to admit it's heavy, but you don't have to carry it alone. You've got people who believe in you, me, your mama, this whole community, and you've got 2 kids who see you as a hero." Her throat tightened, emotions swelling. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like a woman who's just trying not to drown." David looked at her, his eyes steady. "Heroes don't always feel like heroes. But when others look at you and see hope, that's when you know you are one." His words wrapped around her like armor, giving her the strength she needed to face another day. In the weeks that followed, Aaliyah's leadership deepened. She organized workshops for single parents, literacy programs for children, and even small job fairs with local businesses. Each success was another reminder that she wasn't just surviving, she was shaping the future. And though Marcus's presence still loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, Aaliyah's focus remained clear. She wasn't the woman who had begged him to stay anymore. She was stronger, wiser, and standing tall on her own foundation. The center wasn't just a building. It was a reflection of her resilience, a legacy for her children and her community. The glow of the city no longer thrilled Marcus. The skyline that once felt like a crown now looked like a cage. Vanessa was gone, and with her went the safety net of wealth and influence. Their last argument had ended with slammed doors and words that stung more than he wanted to admit. Now Marcus found himself back in a one-bedroom apartment in a less glamorous part of Atlanta. The leather seats of luxury cars had been replaced with bus rides. The tailored suits hung limp in his closet, useless reminders of a life that had slipped through his fingers. He sat at the small kitchen table, a pile of unopened bills in front of him. His phone buzzed with calls he didn't want to answer, creditors, old business associates demanding money he didn't have. He pressed his palms to his face, whispering into the silence, "How did it come to this?" The truth haunted him. He had traded love for ambition, family for fantasy, and ended up with nothing. One evening, after another rejection from a potential investor, Marcus wandered the streets of his old neighborhood. The air smelled of fried food and summer heat. He passed the corner store where he and Aaliyah once bought sodas after late-night walks. Memories stabbed at him, her laughter, her dreams entwined with his, the promise that they would build an empire together. He stumbled into a bar, ordering a drink he couldn't afford. The bartender eyed him suspiciously when he slid over his last 20. Marcus sipped slowly, the burn in his throat, nothing compared to the ache in his chest. 2 men at the bar recognized him from his days with Vanessa. One leaned closer, smirking. "Didn't you used to be somebody?" "I saw your picture in a magazine once. Atlanta's rising star, right?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "I'm still somebody." The man laughed. "Not from where I'm sitting. Looks like you're just another brother who flew too close to the sun and fell hard." Marcus shoved away from the bar before his anger got the better of him. Out on the street, the night air felt heavy. For the first time, he admitted to himself how far he had fallen. Later that week, he tried calling Vanessa, but her number had been disconnected. He reached out to old contacts, but none of them wanted to be associated with him anymore. The doors that had once swung open at the sound of her name were now firmly shut. He sat alone in his apartment, staring at the empty walls. His pride had carried him here, But pride couldn't fill the silence. Pride couldn't pay the bills. Pride couldn't give him back the family he had abandoned. One night, he walked past the Carter Children's Center. Lights glowed from the windows, and he could hear faint laughter drifting into the street. He froze, watching through the glass, as Aaliyah moved among the children with calm authority, her smile radiant, her presence commanding respect. David stood beside her, carrying supplies, his posture protective, loyal. Marcus's chest tightened. He saw Jordan and Maya running across the room, their tiny hands reaching for their mother. It was a life he had forfeited, a life he once believed was too small for him, but now it looked larger than anything he had known. He whispered to himself, voice breaking, "That should have been me." Tears he hadn't allowed himself in years slipped down his face. For the first time, Marcus wasn't angry at anyone else. He wasn't blaming circumstances or excuses. The blame rested squarely on his shoulders, and as he stood in the shadows watching the family and future that no longer belonged to him, Marcus realized he had reached his breaking point. Marcus sat on the park bench, watching Jordan and Maya chase each other near the swings. He hadn't meant to follow them there, but when he saw Aaliyah walking with the twins, something in him wouldn't let go. His chest tightened as he gathered the courage to approach. When Aaliyah noticed him, her steps slowed. The warmth on her face as she watched her children play shifted instantly into steel. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" she asked, her voice firm. "I needed to see you," he said, standing awkwardly. "To see them, please just hear me out." She crossed her arms, silent but unyielding. Marcus exhaled shakily. "I've lost everything. Vanessa's gone, the business deals dried up, and the so-called friends I thought I had vanished. I'm standing here with nothing but regrets, and I realize what I threw away was the only thing that ever mattered." Aaliyah's eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. "You walked out on me when I was carrying them. Do you know the nights I cried myself to sleep? Do you know how many mornings I woke up terrified of failing them? And all that time, you were sipping champagne in penthouses." He lowered his head. "I was a coward. I thought success meant proving I didn't need anyone. But I was wrong. I need them. I need you." Aaliyah shook her head slowly. "You don't get to say that now. You don't get to show up when it's convenient and claim what you abandoned." His voice cracked. "Please, Aaliyah. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance to make it right. Let me be their father. Let me try." For a long moment, only the laughter of the children filled the silence. Aaliyah's heart ached. Part of her wanted to believe him, to trust the remorse in his eyes. But then she remembered the hospital room, the empty chair where he should have been. She remembered the nights she worked herself to exhaustion, rocking crying babies alone. "You talk about making it right," she said finally. "But you can't give back the years we lost. You can't erase the pain. And I won't gamble my children's future on the hope that you won't run again." Marcus's shoulders slumped, his face pale. "So that's it? There's no way back?" "There's a difference between forgiveness and trust," Aaliyah replied. "I can forgive you for me, but I can't trust you with them. They deserve stability, love, and consistency. And I already have that, with my mother, with this community, with people who never left." As if on cue, David walked up, carrying juice boxes for the twins. He noticed Marcus immediately, his expression tightening. "Everything all right here?" Aaliyah gave a small nod. "Yes. We were just finishing." David set the drinks down for the kids before standing beside her. His quiet presence spoke louder than words, steady, loyal, unshaken. Marcus looked between them, the truth hitting him harder than any insult ever could. "I see now," he murmured. "I waited too long. I threw it all away." He stepped back, his eyes on the twins one last time. Tell them I love them, even if they don't know me." Aaliyah's voice softened, but her resolve remained. "You need to tell them yourself someday, when you've proven you can stand." Marcus nodded, tears brimming, then turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last. Aaliyah watched him disappear down the path. Her chest ached, but her spirit stood tall. For the first time, she knew she wasn't bound by the choices he had made. The future belonged to her, and to the family she had built without him. Years later, the Carter Children's Center stood as a beacon in the community. The once faded building was now vibrant, its walls alive with murals painted by local youth. Every morning, children filled its halls with laughter, their backpacks bouncing, their futures a little brighter, because someone had believed they deserved better. Aaliyah stood at the front desk, Jordan and Maya now old enough to help hand out snacks to younger kids. They had grown into curious, compassionate children, Jordan with his father's eyes but his mother's determination, Maya with her grandmother's quiet wisdom. To them, this center wasn't just a building, it was home. "Mom," Maya said, tugging on her sleeve, "can I read to the little kids today?" Aaliyah smiled, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Of course, baby." "They'll love that," Jordan chimed in, "and I'm going to help Mr. David fix the swings." David entered just in time to hear, chuckling as he set down a toolbox. "You sure are. You've got steady hands like your mama." His words carried warmth, and Aaliyah felt the quiet comfort of knowing she wasn't walking this path alone. Evelyn, older now but still sharp, sat by the window watching the children play. "I told you, baby girl," she said with a proud smile. "God don't put more on you than you can bear. Look at what you've built." Aaliyah's chest swelled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, or this community." But even in the glow of success, Marcus lingered at the edges of her thoughts. He hadn't vanished completely. From time to time he appeared at the park or outside the center, always at a distance. He never caused trouble, never demanded anything. He simply watched, a man learning to live with the consequences of choices that had cost him everything. One autumn evening, as Aaliyah locked up the center, she spotted him across the street. Their eyes met, and for a moment silence carried everything words couldn't. He looked thinner, older, but his expression was softer, humbled. He gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement, before turning away into the night. Aaliyah stood there a moment longer, then exhaled. She no longer carried the weight of his betrayal on her shoulders. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it didn't mean welcoming him back. It meant letting go of the chains his absence had once placed on her. Back at home, as she tucked Jordan and Maya into bed, they asked their usual nightly question. "Mama," Jordan whispered, "are we gonna be okay?" Aaliyah kissed his forehead. "We're not just okay. We're more than okay. We're strong, we're loved, and we've got a future waiting for us." Maya smiled sleepily. "Because of you." The words filled Aaliyah's heart with a warmth deeper than any riches could buy. She had once been abandoned, broken, left to fend for herself. But now she was more than a survivor. She was a builder of dreams, a protector of hope, and a living testament that betrayal could birth resilience. The Carter Children's Center thrived, her family thrived, and Aaliyah herself had blossomed into the woman she was always meant to be. And as she lay in bed that night, her last thought was not of Marcus or the pain he caused, but of the bright road ahead. A road she had paved with faith, perseverance, and love that refused to give up. This story reminds us that even when betrayal shatters what we thought was forever, strength and faith can rebuild something stronger than we ever imagined. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one, filled with lessons about resilience, love, and redemption. And before you go, make sure to click on the video suggested on your screen. You won't want to miss what comes next.